Chapter 1. Introduction, The Forgotten God Part 1. Opening invocation, there is a silence older than time itself. Before the first breath was drawn, before the stars burned in the blackness, before thought learned to name what it saw, there was presence. Infinite, unseen, unborn. It was not a being among beings. It was being itself, the nameless source from which all things rise, the stillness that underlies every motion, the awareness that watches every dawn and dusk. Once, humanity knew this silence. We walked with it, not as strangers but as children returning home. The world was not divided between the sacred and the mundane. Everything was a reflection of the same eternal mystery. The wind was a whisper of God. The river was his flowing thought. The mountains were his stillness made visible. But somewhere along the path of history a shadow fell upon our remembrance. The stars were charted, the heavens measured, the mysteries dissected, and in our pursuit of knowledge, we lost the wisdom of wonder. The silence was buried under the noise of progress, and so the divine, once closer to us than our own breath, became the forgotten God. To forget God is not to deny him outright. It is to live as though the sacred has no place in our days, as though the infinite were not folded into every heartbeat. It is not rebellion but neglect, not hatred but distraction. The forgetting began quietly, a creeping numbness of the soul. We replaced reverence with reason, devotion with productivity, and prayer with performance. We built towers of glass that reached into the sky, but no longer lifted our gaze beyond it. Our gods became our own reflections, shining from the screens we carry, whispering our names in the language of algorithms and applause. We did not banish God from the world. We simply forgot to look for him, yet still the silence waits. It waits beneath the surface of our noise. It waits in the spaces between our thoughts, in the pause between two breaths, in the ache that no success can soothe. It waits, not as punishment but as invitation, because God cannot be forgotten by the universe, only by those who turn their eyes from what they already are. Listen. Truly listen. Do you hear it? The hum beneath all things? That quiet presence when the world stops shouting? That stillness when you close your eyes at night and all the stories fall away? That is where he lives. Not in the heavens, but in the silence that holds the heavens. Not in ancient temples, but in the unguarded moment between thoughts, where awareness rests untouched. This is not the God of sermons or statues, not a name bound by a single creed. This is the God who is the eternal now that neither begins nor ends, the pulse behind every heartbeat, the breath behind every breath, and yet we run. We fill every empty space with something: music, messages, noise, light. We fear the quiet because in the quiet we might hear something greater than ourselves, something that does not need to be entertained but remembered. Forgetting God is easy. He does not shout. He whispers. He speaks in stillness, and the stillness is something we have taught ourselves to fear. We have become uncomfortable with what we cannot control, with what cannot be measured or monetized, and so we flee into distractions and call it living. But deep down in the quiet corners of our hearts, something aches to return. A homesickness without a name, a longing that no possession, no lover, no victory can satisfy. It is the soul's way of remembering what the mind has forgotten, that there was once a presence so close we mistook it for ourselves. The prophets called it God. The mystics called it the beloved. The poets called it the light. The philosophers called it the one. But the name does not matter. For all names point toward the same horizon, the mystery beyond all knowing and yet nearer to us than our own breath. To speak of God is not to describe a being, but to remember a relationship. And to remember that relationship is to awaken from the great forgetting, the illusion that we are separate from what gives us life. If you are listening now, not just with your ears, but with your awareness, then you have already begun to return. The first step is not to seek but to stop running, to let the world's noise fall silent for just a moment, because the moment you stop searching out there, you will feel something stir in here, a stillness that has always been waiting. That stillness is God remembering himself through you. This is the beginning, the call to remembrance, the moment the forgotten stirs again within the heart of man. For every soul that pauses long enough to listen becomes a doorway. And through that doorway, the divine enters the world once more. The forgotten God is not lost. He has simply been waiting for you to stop and turn around. Part 2. The Age of Noise. There was a time when silence was our teacher. When dawn rose and the world greeted it with stillness, not with alarms, notifications, or headlines. A time when the soul had room to breathe, when thoughts moved slowly enough to be seen, when a man could walk through the forest and feel the presence of the sacred in every rustle of the leaves. That time has not vanished. It has merely been buried beneath noise. Noise is no longer just sound. It is a constant hum, a vibration that never lets the mind rest. It's the scroll of the screen, the buzz in the pocket, the chatter in the mind that cannot stop narrating. Noise is not only what we hear, it is what we have become. We live in an age where silence feels like emptiness, where solitude feels like punishment. The modern soul trembles in quiet moments, reaching instinctively for something, anything, to fill the void. And yet that void was never meant to be feared. It is the womb of creation, the doorway to the eternal. But in our pursuit of progress, we mistook noise for life. Every day, billions wake to the glow of a small screen, the new altar of attention. Our prayers are typed, not spoken. Our devotions measured by likes, not by light. The sacred has been replaced by the spectacle. The human being, once a seeker of truth, is now a consumer of distraction. We do not meditate, we scroll. We do not reflect, we react. We no longer hear the whisper of the divine because the volume of the world has been turned all the way up. This is not evil. It is forgetfulness disguised as progress. We have built a world that moves faster than the soul can follow, and in doing so we have become strangers to ourselves. Listen carefully. The noise is not accidental. It serves a purpose, to drown out the unbearable truth of stillness. For in stillness we see what we have become. In silence we meet the parts of ourselves that long for something more than comfort, more than entertainment, more than applause. And that meeting terrifies us, so we escape. We fill our days with endless motion. Messages, updates, ambitions, noise. We run from one distraction to another, hoping the next thing will finally bring peace. But peace is not found in movement. It is found in the space between movements, in the pause where awareness rests. The forgotten God lives in that pause. We worship without realizing it. Every act of attention is a form of devotion. What you give your awareness to becomes your God. Once that devotion was given to the eternal, to truth, to beauty, to love that transcended the self. Now that same devotion is fragmented and scattered among countless idols. The idol of productivity, the idol of appearance, the idol of validation. We rise each morning to serve them, willingly, even eagerly. And at the end of the day, we are left wondering why we feel so empty. The reason is simple. The soul cannot be nourished by noise. It is fed by stillness. There is a subtle sadness that haunts our generation, a restlessness that no success can quiet. We call it anxiety, burnout, or loneliness. But beneath those names lies something deeper, a spiritual starvation. We have forgotten how to sit with ourselves, and in forgetting that, we have forgotten how to sit with God. We have become addicted to motion. If our bodies are still, our minds race. If our minds rest, we grow uneasy, reaching for something to occupy us. We mistake rest for laziness and silence for absence. But silence is not the absence of God. Silence is the presence of God. Before we drown it in sound, walk into any public space, a cafe, a train, an office, and notice how every silence is instantly filled. Music, chatter, machines, screens, and the world trembles with its own impatience. We do not allow a single moment to breathe, because to breathe would mean to feel the ache beneath all the doing. That ache is the soul remembering what it has lost. And so we live as though eternity has been postponed, as if the sacred can wait until the weekend or retirement or death. We chase one horizon after another, never realizing that the horizon moves because we do. The ancients were not ignorant. They knew how to live with mystery. They built temples, not skyscrapers, not because they lacked technology, but because they understood reverence. They left space for the divine. We have built a world without space. Every inch occupied, every moment monetized. We have forgotten that emptiness is holy. In our fear of nothingness, we filled the world with everything, and in doing so, lost the one thing that mattered. The age of noise is not defined by sound, but by the absence of listening. We hear everything yet understand nothing. We see everything yet notice nothing. We know everything, yet feel nothing. We have traded awareness for information, connection for communication, presence for performance. And in this trade, something sacred has slipped away, quietly, like a dream upon waking. The forgotten God has not vanished. He has simply been drowned in the clamor of our own creation. He waits in the silence between notifications, in the breath before you answer. In the moment you put the phone down and simply exist. That is where he has always been. Patient, unchanging, eternal. But here's the secret. The noise cannot destroy the sacred. It can only cover it. And no matter how thick the noise becomes, it can be pierced by a single act. A pause, a breath, a moment of genuine attention. In that instant, the veil trembles and the forgotten begins to remember itself. That moment is the doorway. The same doorway the mystics entered through. The same doorway that leads from distraction to devotion. And it is still open. Always open. The age of noise is not a curse, it is a test. A divine paradox. For in the very act of drowning out the sacred, humanity has created the greatest opportunity to rediscover it. When you finally grow weary of the noise, when you no longer find comfort in distraction, when the silence, once terrifying, begins to feel like home, then you will understand the forgotten God was never gone. You were simply too loud to hear him. Part 3. The Lost Inner Temple. There is a temple that no hand has built. It stands within every human being, silent, invisible, eternal. Its walls are not of stone, but of awareness. Its altar is the heart itself. This is the first and oldest temple, the dwelling place of the divine. Long before men carved sanctuaries into mountains, long before priests raised monuments to the heavens, this inner temple was already here. Every prayer, every ritual, every sacred text, all were meant to point us back to it. But in the great forgetting, we wandered outward. We looked for God in stars and statues, in doctrines and buildings, in power and miracles. We searched everywhere but within, and so we built temples on earth while the one within us crumbled in neglect. The human heart was once the meeting place of heaven and earth. To enter it was to enter eternity, but we have filled it with noise, fear, and endless striving. The sacred space has been crowded by shadows, the endless chatter of thought, the clamor of desire, the heavy furniture of ego. It is not that the temple has vanished. It has merely been covered, buried under years of forgetting. The flame still burns, but we have turned away from its light. Every ancient tradition spoke of this truth in its own language. In the Christian mystic's whisper, it is said, "The kingdom of God is within you." In the Hindu Upanishads, the sages declare, "The self is Brahman, the eternal reality within." In the Buddha's silence, one hears that enlightenment is not attained but uncovered, and in the Sufi's longing, the beloved is not a distant deity but the heartbeat itself. All paths, when walked with sincerity, return to the same doorway, inward. Because to remember God is not to climb upward into the sky. It is to descend into the depth of your own being. But to enter this inner temple is not easy. The doors are guarded by the mind, by the constant motion of thoughts that never cease. You cannot enter while running, while worrying, while striving to control. You can only enter through stillness, through surrender. Stillness is the key. Surrender is the gate. When you grow silent enough, you begin to feel the pulse of something larger than yourself. It is not loud. It does not argue or demand. It simply is, quietly radiant, quietly alive. That is the forgotten God whispering from within the sanctuary of your own heart. We live in a time when the outer world demands our devotion. We are taught to polish the body, to advertise the self, to build a perfect image, while the inner life is left in disrepair. We decorate the outer walls, while the inner temple gathers dust, and yet it is this inner temple that gives meaning to all the rest. Without it, we are like beautifully painted shells, vibrant on the outside, hollow within. We chase experiences, knowledge, possessions, but all of it falls through us like water through open hands. For the soul is not satisfied by what enters through the eyes or ears. It longs for what arises from within. Look inward for a moment. Close your eyes. Do not seek visions or voices. Just notice the quiet awareness behind your thoughts, the watcher that never sleeps, never judges, never changes. That awareness has always been there, from your first breath to this very moment. It is not born and it will not die. It is the silent witness to your entire life, the still center around which all your stories spin. That witness is the forgotten God. It is not something you must reach. It is what you already are. Beneath the layers of identity and noise, the temple was lost the moment we began to mistake the mind for the self. We believed that the endless stream of thought was who we are. And so we built our identity around shadows, memories, opinions, fears, ambitions, all of them changing, all of them impermanent. The eternal was traded for the temporary, and in that exchange the temple grew dark, but the sacred flame never went out. Even in the depths of despair, even in the blindness of distraction, the light still burns, waiting to be seen. To rediscover the inner temple is to remember how to dwell in your own presence without fear. To sit in stillness and realize you are not empty, you are full of life itself. Every heartbeat, every breath, every quiet moment of awareness is a prayer, a reminder of the eternal pulse within you. You need not kneel in a cathedral to find the divine. You need only kneel inward, into the silence that holds your being together. That is the true act of worship. But make no mistake, entering the temple demands honesty. You must face what lives there, the unhealed wounds, the forgotten grief, the quiet guilt, the longing you have buried beneath your distractions. These are the shadows that guard the gates. You cannot bypass them. You must embrace them. For only by walking through your darkness do you find the light that was hidden there all along. This is the sacred paradox. The divine does not live apart from your humanity. It lives within it. To reject your pain is to reject the very ground of your transformation. To meet it with love is to rediscover God. The mystics have always known this secret. They wandered not to find God in the clouds, but to find him in the quiet chambers of the heart. They built no temples but the temple of the soul. And there, in solitude, they heard the whisper that creation itself had been trying to remember. You are not separate from the divine. You are the place where the divine remembers itself. When the noise of the world fades, even for a moment, you may feel it, that faint radiance from within, a peace that asks for nothing, a joy that depends on nothing, a love that flows without a source. This is not something you achieve. It is what you uncover. To enter the lost inner temple is to realize that you were never truly lost. You had only forgotten the way home. The journey inward is the journey upward. For the heart is not a destination. It is a mirror, reflecting the infinite sky within you. And when you gaze deeply enough into that mirror, the distinction between seeker and sought disappears. You and the divine are revealed to be one and the same awareness, playing hide and seek in the labyrinth of existence. The temple stands ready. Its gates are open. The forgotten God waits not as a judge, but as a lover longing to be remembered. He asks for no offerings but your attention, no sacrifice but your distractions, no prayer but your silence. Come home. Come home to the temple that has never left you. Come home to the God you have never truly lost. Part 4. The Death of the Sacred. There was a time when the world itself was a temple, when the sunrise was an act of worship, and the whisper of wind through trees was a psalm. When people spoke not to be heard but to harmonize with the great silence that surrounded all things. The sacred was not something we visited on holy days. It was the air we breathed. Every stream, every stone, every heartbeat was alive with mystery. We did not believe in God, we experienced him. But slowly that intimacy began to fade. The world that once pulsed with presence became a collection of objects. We began to see life not as sacred but as usable, a resource to master, a puzzle to solve. And so began the long forgetting, the slow eclipse of the sacred by the shadow of reason, the age of disenchantment, when the light of the sacred dimmed, humanity turned its gaze elsewhere. We built cities of glass and steel, machines that reached into the heavens. We split atoms and measured galaxies. We declared ourselves gods, creators of our own destiny. The philosopher Nietzsche saw it coming, and his words still echo through the modern soul. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. But he was not celebrating. He was mourning. He saw that the death of God was not a triumph of knowledge. It was the birth of a vast emptiness. For without the sacred there is no true north. Without something greater than ourselves, all directions collapse into confusion. The hollow triumph of the mind. We replaced the mystery of being with the mechanics of knowing. We traded the infinite for the measurable, and though our knowledge grew, our wisdom withered. Science told us how things happen, but it could not tell us why. Technology gave us power, but it could not give us peace. We built rockets that could touch the stars, but forgot how to touch each other's hearts. We cured diseases of the body, while the soul grew sicker with every generation. We thought the sacred had died, but in truth, it was we who became numb to its presence. The collapse of meaning. When the sacred leaves a civilization, what takes its place? Not nothing, but noise. Ideologies, distractions, obsessions, and desires rush in to fill the void. We worship progress, identity, wealth, control, anything that promises certainty in an uncertain world. But these gods are brittle. They demand everything and give nothing. They leave us restless, addicted, and perpetually unsatisfied. The soul cannot thrive on substitutes. You can feed it data, comfort, luxury, but it will starve for wonder. It will whisper to you in the night that something essential has been lost. And if you ignore that whisper long enough, it becomes despair. That despair is not the absence of God, and it is His silence, waiting for you to notice. The spiritual consequence. When the sacred dies in a culture, beauty becomes decoration instead of revelation. Love becomes transaction instead of transformation. Truth becomes opinion, and wisdom becomes content. We begin to treat life as a commodity, people as tools, and the earth as an object. We mistake complexity for depth and noise for vitality. But beneath it all, the soul remembers. No matter how advanced our civilization becomes, no matter how many systems we build to replace meaning, there remains a quiet ache, the ache for something holy, something real, something infinite, the shadow and the light yet. And this is the paradox. The death of the sacred was not the end of the story. It was a dark night, yes, but every dark night hides the dawn. When the old gods fall silent, when the symbols lose their power, when the temples crumble, what remains is the bare experience of being. It is in this emptiness that a deeper truth can emerge, that the sacred was never confined to form. It was never limited to temples or names or rituals. It lives wherever consciousness remembers itself. The death of the sacred in the outer world was meant to awaken the sacred within. The hidden invitation. When everything external fails to satisfy, the soul turns inward. When the outer gods fall silent, the inner voice begins to whisper again. This is not the end of faith, it is its transformation. The sacred is not gone. It has gone underground, waiting to be rediscovered not in churches or scriptures, but in the quiet awareness behind your own eyes. This is what mystics throughout time have always known, that the true temple is consciousness itself, that the eternal is not above you but within you. The resurrection of meaning. Every civilization that forgets the sacred eventually hungers for it again. You can see it even now, in the rise of meditation, mindfulness, the search for purpose. Even our obsessions with self-improvement are disguised cries for transcendence. We are not trying to perfect the self. We are trying to remember what lives beyond it. The sacred cannot die because it is not a thing. It is the essence of all things. It does not need belief to exist. It needs awareness to be seen. The death of the sacred, then, was never a final chapter. It was the pause before remembering, the winter before spring, the silence before the first word, the call to reawaken. Now the question arises, can humanity remember what it once knew? Can we look at the world again and see not just utility but divinity? Can we learn to touch, to speak, to love when with reverence once more? The answer does not come from outside. It comes in the quiet turning of attention inward, in the rediscovery of that spark which no forgetting can extinguish, for the sacred has not died. It is alive in every act of compassion, in every moment of awe, in every breath taken with awareness. It is alive in you, even now, waiting not to be worshipped, but to be remembered. The death of the sacred was never truly a death. It was a sleep, and like all sleep, it is followed by waking. The forgotten God has not abandoned humanity. He is simply waiting for the day we open our eyes and realize that the silence we feared was never empty after all. Part 5. Remembering the presence. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the noise begins to lose its power, when the distractions that once promised meaning start to sound hollow, when the mind, weary of its own voice, finally grows quiet enough to hear something else, something ancient, patient, and alive. That something is presence. It does not announce itself. It does not demand belief. It simply waits, as it has always waited, in the silent space behind every thought, beneath every breath, within every heartbeat. The return to stillness, remembering the presence, begins with stillness. Not forced stillness, not the stillness of control, but the stillness that arises when you stop trying to be anything at all. In that stillness, you discover that life does not need your constant management. The heart beats. The breath flows. The earth turns. Existence unfolds in effortless harmony. You begin to realize that you are not separate from that harmony. You are it. The same intelligence that moves the galaxies is the one that moves your lungs. The same mystery that holds the stars together holds you together too. And in that realization, the forgotten God begins to stir, not as a concept, but as a living awareness that was never absent. The presence behind all things. What is this presence? It cannot be named, but you have felt it before. It is the quiet joy that rises for no reason, the peace that floods you when you watch the sunset in silence, the feeling of timelessness when you hold someone you love and the world disappears for a moment. It is the awareness that watches your thoughts without being touched by them. The witness that has never grown old, never been wounded, never changed. That is the divine within you. The presence that cannot be lost, only forgotten. Seeing with new eyes to remember the presence is to see the world differently. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The mundane reveals its miracle. A glass of water glimmers like a diamond. The sound of rain becomes a hymn. The laughter of a child becomes a prophecy. You begin to realize that God was never missing from the world. You were missing from the moment. The presence was always here, but your attention was elsewhere. Now as attention returns home, everything becomes luminous again. The practice of remembering. Remembering the presence is not a matter of belief or ritual. It is a practice of awareness. It begins with simple things. A single conscious breath. A moment of gratitude. A pause before speaking. In those small pauses, the infinite peeks through. You start to sense that you are not the doer, but the witness of doing. Not the thinker, but the space in which thoughts appear and fade. Each moment of awareness is a step back toward the sacred center. Each breath taken in stillness is an act of remembrance. This is prayer, not the speaking kind, but the listening kind. The false divide for centuries. Humanity has divided life into two realms, the sacred and the secular, the divine and the mundane. But the presence knows no such division. Every act can be holy when done in awareness. Washing dishes, driving to work, listening deeply to another soul. The forgotten God does not live in temples of stone. He lives in the temple of attention. Wherever your full awareness rests, there he is. The sacred is not somewhere else. Why, it is right here, disguised as this moment. The humility of awareness. To remember the presence is to remember humility. The gentle knowing that you are not the center of existence, but part of its vast unfolding. Humility is not weakness. It is clarity. It is the understanding that the same force breathing life into the stars is breathing life into you, that every heartbeat is a gift you did not earn. From that humility arises gratitude, not the kind you recite, but the kind that silences you. Gratitude turns the heart into an altar and the breath into prayer. It transforms existence into communion. The rebirth of reverence. The modern world has forgotten reverence, the deep bow of the soul before the mystery of being. But remembering the presence is the rebirth of reverence. To live in reverence is to recognize the divine signature on everything, even pain, even loss, even the fleeting. You begin to see that nothing is ordinary, that the sacred hides in impermanence itself, that every moment is a revelation if only you are awake enough to receive it. When you remember this, life stops being something to survive and becomes something to adore. The gentle revolution, remembering the presence, is the quietest revolution in the universe. It changes nothing on the surface, yet transforms everything beneath it. It does not shout or convert. It does not demand followers or temples. It simply turns one human being inward until the eternal flame within them lights the world anew. And when one person remembers, they remind another. A single candle can ignite 1,000 others, and the darkness, so vast, so heavy, cannot resist the light. The forgotten God returns through remembrance, one breath, one moment, one awakening heart at a time. Living in the presence, when you live in awareness of the divine, you do not escape the world. You embrace it more fully. You still feel pain, but now pain becomes a teacher. You still face uncertainty, but now it becomes mystery, not fear. You still walk through darkness, but now you know the light walks with you. This is not belief, it is direct knowing. It is the soul remembering its source, and once you remember, you realize you were never apart. The distance between you and God was only an illusion of the mind. Presence was never lost, only unseen. The eternal companion, when all else fades. When relationships end, when achievements crumble, when even the body grows weak, the presence remains. It has always been your companion. It has watched your joys and sorrows without judgment, without preference. It knows you not by name, but by essence. And when you remember it, you remember who you truly are, not a fleeting personality, but a wave of consciousness rising and falling in an infinite sea. The forgotten God is not a figure waiting in heaven. He is the stillness that listens through your ears, the awareness that watches through your eyes, the love that beats through your heart. To remember him is to awaken to yourself, not as the self you think you are, but as the self that never began and will never end. That is the presence. That is God remembered. Part 6. The Mirror of the Soul. There is a mirror hidden within every human being, not made of glass or silver, but of awareness itself. It is the mirror of the soul. Clear, still, infinite, perfectly designed to reflect the light of the divine. When the mirror is clean, it reflects heaven effortlessly. Every thought, every action, every breath becomes a window through which the sacred shines. But over time, dust begins to gather. The dust of fears, judgments, pride, and pain. The dust of me and mine. And as that dust thickens, the reflection fades. The light of God grows dim, not because it has left, but because the mirror has forgotten how to shine. The veil of forgetting. Every soul begins as pure awareness. Every child is born radiant, eyes open, heart unguarded, fully immersed in the miracle of being alive. But the world teaches us to look outward, to compare, to compete, to want, to define ourselves by how we appear rather than what we are. We learn to live behind masks, to become identities instead of essences. The mirror of the soul grows cloudy, and we begin to forget the light we once reflected so naturally. The divine doesn't disappear. We simply stop recognizing it. The shadow of the ego. The ego is the shadow cast by the soul's light. It's not evil, only confused. It believes itself to be the source when in truth it is only the reflection. The ego says, I am separate. I must protect. I must prove. And in doing so, it builds walls around the mirror, walls that block both light and love. It is ironic. For the ego's greatest fear is to disappear, yet its disappearance is the very awakening it longs for. The ego cannot reflect the divine because it insists on being the center. And as long as it clings to its own image, the light cannot pass through. Only when the ego bows, when it learns humility and surrender, does the mirror begin to clear again. Polishing the mirror to polish the mirror of the soul is the true work of spiritual life. Prayer, meditation, forgiveness, silence. These are not rituals to please God. They are ways of cleaning the dust. Each moment of honesty removes a veil. Each act of kindness wipes away a stain. Each breath of awareness restores a little more of your natural brilliance. You do not earn God's presence. You reveal it. You do not become divine. You remember that you already are. The mystics never spoke of attaining enlightenment. They spoke of remembrance. For what is enlightenment but the mirror remembering the light it has always held? The light within the cracks, and yet there is beauty even in the broken mirror. For the cracks too let the light through. Every wound, every sorrow, every failure is an opening. Pain softens what pride had hardened. Loss strips away what illusion had built. Through suffering, the soul learns compassion, and compassion itself is a form of light. So do not curse your cracks. Do not hide your imperfections. They are the places where God enters. The light does not ask for perfection, only openness, self-knowledge as reflection. The ancient sages taught, "He who knows himself and knows his Lord." To look inward with sincerity is to gaze into the mirror of the soul. You may see shadows at first, old memories, regrets, desires, but if you keep looking, if you stay still and keep watching, the shadows dissolve, and what remains is light. In that moment, you realize that what you've been seeking is not outside you, but looking out through your very eyes. The divine is not an object to be found. It is the awareness that is looking. You are not the reflection. You are the mirror itself, the sacred reflection in others. When the mirror of your own heart grows clear, you begin to see the same light in others, the beggar and the king, the child and the elder, the friend and the stranger. All become reflections of the same radiance. You no longer see them and me, you see the one, shining through countless forms. This is the birth of compassion, not as an effort, but as recognition. To love others becomes as natural as the sun giving light. You love because you cannot help but see that it is yourself you are loving. The same essence, the same light, the silence beyond reflection. As the mirror grows ever clearer, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The mirror and the light are not two. In the deepest silence, there is no longer you reflecting God. There is only seeing, the pure, effortless awareness. This is what the mystics called union, not the merging of two things, but the realization that there was never separation at all. The soul and God are not two mirrors facing each other. They are one infinite radiance looking at itself, the eternal reflection. And so, the journey of remembrance is not about becoming divine, but about realizing that you always were. Every act of love, every moment of stillness, every surrender to truth reminds the mirror of its own brilliance. The forgotten God was never far away. He was always shining through the glass of your being, waiting for the dust to settle, and when it does, you look into the mirror of your soul and find no image, no you, only light. The same light that births galaxies, the same light that watches your thoughts, the same light that loves without reason. That is the divine remembering itself through you. The prayer of reflection. Beloved light, polish this heart until it shines like yours. Let no shadow remain between us. Let every tear wash away my forgetfulness. Let every breath be remembrance. Let me see you in all things and all things in you. For in truth there is no mirror and no reflection, only light, remembering itself as you. Part 6. The Mirror of the Soul. There is a mirror hidden within every human being, not made of glass or silver, but of awareness itself. It is the mirror of the soul. Clear, still, infinite, perfectly designed to reflect the light of the divine. When the mirror is clean, it reflects heaven effortlessly. Every thought, every action, every breath becomes a window through which the sacred shines. But over time, dust begins to gather. The dust of fears, judgments, pride, and pain. The dust of me and mine. And as that dust thickens, the reflection fades. The light of God grows dim, not because it has left, but because the mirror has forgotten how to shine. The veil of forgetting. Every soul begins as pure awareness. Every child is born radiant, eyes open, heart unguarded, fully immersed in the miracle of being alive. But the world teaches us to look outward, to compare, to compete, to want, to define ourselves by how we appear rather than what we are. We learn to live behind masks, to become identities instead of essences. The mirror of the soul grows cloudy, and we begin to forget the light we once reflected so naturally. The divine doesn't disappear. We simply stop recognizing it. The shadow of the ego. The ego is the shadow cast by the soul's light. It's not evil, only confused. It believes itself to be the source when in truth it is only the reflection. The ego says, I am separate. I must protect. I must prove. And in doing so, it builds walls around the mirror, walls that block both light and love. It is ironic, for the ego's greatest fear is to disappear, yet its disappearance is the very awakening it longs for. The ego cannot reflect the divine because it insists on being the center. and as long as it clings to its own image, the light cannot pass through. Only when the ego bows, when it learns humility and surrender, does the mirror begin to clear again. Polishing the mirror to polish the mirror of the soul is the true work of spiritual life. Prayer, meditation, forgiveness, silence, these are not rituals to please God. They are ways of cleaning the dust. Each moment of honesty removes a veil. Each act of kindness wipes away a stain. Each breath of awareness restores a little more of your natural brilliance. You do not earn God's presence. You reveal it. You do not become divine. You remember that you already are. The mystics never spoke of attaining enlightenment. They spoke of remembrance. For what is enlightenment but the mirror remembering the light it has always held? The light within the cracks, and yet there is beauty even in the broken mirror. For the cracks too, let the light through. Every wound, every sorrow, every failure is an opening. Pain softens what pride had hardened. Loss strips away what illusion had built. Through suffering, the soul learns compassion, and compassion itself is a form of light. So do not curse your cracks. Do not hide your imperfections. They are the places where God enters. The light does not ask for perfection, nor only openness, self-knowledge as reflection. The ancient sages taught, "He who knows himself knows his Lord." To look inward with sincerity is to gaze into the mirror of the soul. You may see shadows at first, old memories, regrets, desires, but if you keep looking, if you stay still and keep watching, the shadows dissolve, and what remains is light. In that moment, you realize that what you've been seeking is not outside you, but looking out through your very eyes. The divine is not an object to be found. It is the awareness that is looking. You are not the reflection. You are the mirror itself. The sacred reflection in others. When the mirror of your own heart grows clear, you begin to see the same light in others, the beggar and the king, the child and the elder, the friend and the stranger. All become reflections of the same radiance. You no longer see them and me. You see the one, shining through countless forms. This is the birth of compassion, not as an effort, but as recognition. To love others becomes as natural as the sun giving light. You love because you cannot help but see that it is yourself you are loving. The same essence, the same light. The silence beyond reflection. As the mirror grows ever clearer, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The mirror and the light are not two. In the deepest silence, there is no longer you reflecting God. There is only seeing, pure, effortless awareness. This is what the mystics called union, not the merging of two things, but the realization that there was never separation at all. The soul and God are not two mirrors facing each other. They are one infinite radiance looking at itself, the eternal reflection. And so, the journey of remembrance is not about becoming divine, but about realizing that you always were. Every act of love, every moment of stillness, every surrender to truth reminds the mirror of its own brilliance. The forgotten God was never far away. He was always shining through the glass of your being, waiting for the dust to settle. And when it does, you look into the mirror of your soul and find no image, no you, only light, the same light that births galaxies, the same light that watches your thoughts, the same light that loves without reason. That is the divine remembering itself through you. The prayer of reflection. Beloved light, polish this heart until it shines like yours. Let no shadow remain between us. Let every tear wash away my forgetfulness. Let every breath be remembrance. Let me see you in all things and all things in you. For in truth there is no mirror and no reflection, only light, remembering itself as you. Part 8. Closing meditation. The return. Breathe. Let everything become still. Let the noise of thought settle like dust falling in a sunlit room. You have walked far, through the ruins of memory, through the silence of the soul, through the long forgetting of the sacred. And now, you have come home. The silence beyond words. Listen. There is a silence beneath all sound, a presence beneath all motion. It has been with you since before you could name yourself. It watches, it witnesses, it waits. You have called it by many names: spirit, self, awareness, God. But it does not need a name. It simply is. It is what remains when every name fades. It is what was here before you were born, and what will remain long after you are gone. It is not something you must reach. You are already inside it. You have never left. The breath of return, breathe in, and as you do, feel the universe breathe with you. The stars, the oceans, the winds, and all moving in one rhythm. The rhythm of life remembering itself. Breathe out. And let go of the weight of your story. Let go of the striving, the seeking, the endless becoming. You have arrived at the still point, the center of all motion, the heart of all hearts. This stillness is not empty. It is full of quiet knowing, full of radiant peace. The circle of return, every soul begins in oneness. Then it journeys outward and into time, into form, into forgetting. It learns, it suffers, it loves, it breaks. And then by some mysterious grace, it begins to remember. This remembering is not the gaining of something new. It is the unveiling of what was always there. You were never apart from the divine. You were simply dreaming the dream of distance. Now the dream fades, and what remains is the unbroken wholeness of being. The infinite now. There is no past. There is no future. Only this eternal moment unfolding itself in quiet perfection. Every heartbeat, every breath, every sound is happening inside the infinite. Even your thoughts of separation are movements of God's own imagination. Look deeply. There was never anything to find, because nothing was ever lost. There was never anywhere to go, because you were never outside of home. The light within all things now. See the world around you, not as objects, not as distractions, but as expressions of the same presence. The trees breathe with you. The air hums with awareness. The ground beneath your feet is sacred. Everywhere you look, you find the same quiet intelligence, the same still light shining through every form. The divine is not above life, but as life. It is not apart from the world, but the world itself seen rightly. The great remembering. Close your eyes for a moment. Listen to your heartbeat. Feel the rhythm, the pulse of existence. That pulse is not yours alone. It is the heartbeat of the universe. The same life that beats in you beats in all. Now say silently to yourself, I remember, not with the mind but with the soul. You remember that you were never abandoned, never separate, never broken. You remember that every joy, every pain, every longing was love in disguise, the infinite guiding you back to itself. Surrender, let go now. Not in defeat, but in trust. Let go of the need to understand. Let go of the effort to control. Let go of the story of me. Allow yourself to dissolve into this vast presence. There is no fear here, for there is no other here. There is only peace, only love, only God, awake as you. The eternal homecoming. You have reached the end of forgetting. You have come to the beginning of remembrance, and in this remembrance everything changes, and yet nothing needs to. The world continues, but now you see it through eyes that no longer divide. You walk, you speak, you work, you love, but every act becomes sacred. You are the same, and yet you are not the same. You have remembered the timeless truth. You and the divine are not two. The whisper in the deepest silence, a whisper arises. Soft as breath, clear as light. I was never gone. You were never lost. You and I have always been one. That whisper is not a voice from above. It is the echo of your own true being. The voice of the forgotten God, awake, alive, and home. The return now. Open your eyes. Look around you. Nothing has changed, and yet everything has. The same room, the same light, the same world, but now it glows. The sacred has returned because you have returned. And in truth you never left. Every sound is prayer. Every face is the face of the beloved. Every heartbeat is eternity remembering itself. This is the return. The end of seeking. The end of separation. The end of the dream and the beginning of endless presence.